Hello! So, final video for Prisoner of Azkaban today. Super exciting. And of course, the way Rowling's designed this is she's bookended the novel using Owl Post. Like, our first chapter is titled Owl Post, our final chapter is titled Owl Post again. So we actually get the entire novel framed with the witch trials, burning witches. That's one of the first images we see opening this book, and so we needed to be aware of it as we went through, and the witch trials that we're risking here. And that image is still deeply present in this final chapter, because we actually have something akin to it happening with Remus, or at least the acknowledgement that something like this could happen. Because he actually steps himself back. He doesn't want to put Dumbledore in the position where he's actually going to have to get fired, so he resigns. He's aware that judgment of him is going to be made purely on this one aspect of him, and it's going to be a very negative judgment. He can recognize the mistakes he made, of course. This is Remus. And he knows that he was stupid for getting his potion. But he's aware that it's basically cut and run, or burn up in the heat of all raging parents who can only see this one aspect of them. Which is just the funniest thing, because of course they're gonna get mad, they get mad at Muggles with the idea that they could be persecuted. And yet here they are doing it to a werewolf. Who a lot of the students actually really like. Like, they know he's been the best that they've had. They don't want the witch burning trial here. They like him. But he has to make that choice. So we're actually having a very well done, book-ended and framed novel here. And it always comes across as sort of the odd man out throughout the series. But I actually happen to really like this. I mean, it's deeply confusing with the time travel and these characters that we haven't met before, suddenly actually becoming really important. But that's the other interesting thing, is this chapter hints at the fact that these characters are going to remain important. They're not like Quirrell, who's dead, or Lockhart, who's significantly not Lockhart anymore. Like, that letter from Sirius says that he's still here. And the friendship that we've seen between Lupin and Sirius says that Remus is still going to be here. So Rowling's sort of allowing this world to expand. It's no longer just about this trio. It's in fact about more. Like Peter Pettigrew. Harry, in remembering Trelawney's prediction, despairs in the idea that he let Peter go. Insofar as he did not allow Sirius and Remus to kill him. Because, of course, nobody really could have prevented that escape when there was suddenly a frickin' werewolf and a hell of a lot of Dementors. But what's happened again is the need to prevent witch trials. If Peter Pettigrew is guilty, which all of them see him as, that has to be something that is proved through the proper system. Because the moment we let the system break down, we lose it completely. And it's a deeply flawed system. We certainly recognize that. But the same breakdown of just ordering Sirius to be kissed, and possibly Remus if Severus has his way, is the same flaw that we then see in letting Peter Pettigrew die. And Harry is not the person to allow that to happen. He's been through enough witch trials, as it were, to know that it's not fair even if you're sure in your convictions. You have to go through the system or mistakes are going to be made. And Harry regrets that in a way, because Peter Pettigrew does get away. But it becomes the question of how much do we let the system then break down? Where is the line of justice in this moment if the system is not going to be just in the long run? They're not going to let Sirius explain himself, and Peter Pettigrew gets off. Then when do you make the correct choice in taking it to your own hands, like Harry and Hermione do in helping Sirius to escape? Well, that line seems to be drawn at when it harms somebody else. It was just for Harry and Hermione to step in because it helped innocent people. It was just for Harry to step in because it helped innocent people insofar as it helped Remus and Sirius not become murderers. And I do believe it was just in stepping in and showing mercy to somebody even though we know full well they're guilty. And that's what Dumbledore points out. He points, of course, to the root of magic. But that's also the root of everything. The moment that Harry showed mercy to Peter, that moment can't disappear. It is there, and it is something that Peter is always going to have to remember. And his choices are going to be, at least in part, based on the fact that somebody gave him a second chance. Even if he makes the decision, as he does, to throw that chance away, part of him is always going to be connected to that moment of mercy. And that is deeply important. So what we actually have here is a chapter that says things are getting dark. Harry actually feels very lousy in the last few days at Hogwarts, because he knows that mistakes were made, that he made some of them, and that consequences of his choices are going to appear. Most notably, of course, having to go back to the Dursleys after having blown up Aunt Marge. He has to face the fact that you can't undo the choices you make. And you might make some wrong choices, but that doesn't make them any less worthy of having been made. Because for Harry, a lot of his last days at Hogwarts are spent in something of a despairing mood. But this chapter, and the train ride home, most notably I think for the trio, is one actually of hope. Even though we have these witch trials continuing, and the question of whether or not Harry's choices were just and right ones, and whether Peter Pettigrew would ever make the right choice, we get hope. We get hope in Dumbledore's reassurances that mercy was the right choice. And that sometimes people can see into the future far greater than they or anyone else ever thought. We also get the reassurance that it was okay for Harry to feel upset about Remus and about Peter, and to think he saw his father. That's not something to laugh at, but something to actually cherish. It's Dumbledore who straight up says, "You found your father that day." and you found him inside of you. And that's okay. We find hope in the fact that Sirius got away. We find hope in the fact that Ron got a new pet and now trusts Crookshanks enough to actually check the owl with him. We find hope in the fact that Ron, while cautious, is not so scarred from this betrayal that he can't have something for himself anymore. Peter, being Scabbers, hasn't ruined pets for Ron. He checks with Crookshanks, and what he actually says is, "That's good enough for me." He doesn't know, but he trusts the cat enough to give it a chance. We find hope in the fact that these students are looking forward to going back, even when things have constantly gone wrong. So while we might have some darkness on the horizon, there's also a few pinpricks of light. I can see stars coming, and that, I think, is what we need to take away from this chapter. That there is hope and happiness in the darkest of times, and maybe we need to be the light. And I think Harry and Ron and Hermione are starting to understand that. And they're gonna need it, because while we can see some stars, there's a whole lot of darkness behind them, and we're gonna have to address that. Okay, so with all that having been said, just a few notes before I go. We are moving on to Goblet of Fire, and we're actually moving on to it tomorrow. I've decided that how I really want to work this set of videos this summer is I'm moving up to at least 2 uploads a week on Mondays and Thursdays. You might get an additional bonus one over the weekend, or sort of between those uploads every now and then. And the reason why I'm doing that is, as of right now, I am not working, and I recognize there's some limitations in the likelihood of whether or not I will be. But since right now I'm not, I want to increase my video upload with the recognition that come September I'm back in school, and I want to front load as much of Goblet of Fire, and with the hopeful possibility of being on to Order of the Phoenix by the time I get back to school in September, because I will then have to decrease again down to 1 video a week. Hopefully with a buffer so that my adjustment period, you're still getting uploads while I'm not necessarily making those videos right then. So with that said, we're gonna hop right into it with tomorrow, and it will be Monday and Thursday from here on out until, in the long run, September, but if something happens before that point, I will definitely let you know. Okay? So until then, I hope you keep reading, and I will too. Bye!